Okay, so you've probably heard the term smart grid being tossed around, right? It's always presented as this incredible upgrade for our future, a way to make our cities and homes way more efficient, way more green. But what if there's a whole other side to that story? I mean, the sales pitch is pretty compelling. The whole idea is a smarter, more eco-friendly energy system for all of us. By using all this data and two-way communication, we can manage our energy better, bring in renewables, the whole shebang. But yeah, not everyone's on board. In fact, the Berkshire Litchfield Environmental Council, or BLEC, has let's just say, a very different perspective. In a formal comment, they basically threw a wrench in the whole thing, saying it's not smart, not safe, and not green. So, what's driving such a strong statement? Well, this isn't just some random opinion. It's a really detailed critique that's based on years of research. So let's do this. Let's actually break down the three main arguments from their official submission. First step is the one that really gets your attention: not safe. And they're not talking about the grid getting hacked or anything like that. Nope. They're talking about the smart meters themselves, the ones on our homes, and the radio frequency radiation they're constantly putting out. Now, to really get what they're saying, we have to understand two different kinds of effects: thermal and non-thermal. Thermal is easy. It's like how a microwave heats your food. It's about heat. But non-thermal, that's much trickier. It's about biological changes happening in our bodies at levels that are too low to actually cause any heating at all. And this really cuts to the core of the whole disagreement. On one side, you have the FCC. Their safety standards are all based on preventing that heating effect, that thermal effect. So they use time-averaged exposure levels. But Black says, whoa, you're missing the point. They argue the real danger isn't the average, it's the sudden, high-energy peak pulses and those non-thermal biological effects. And they say this isn't just some theory. The council's submission is full of reports from a growing number of people who claim they started developing symptoms just like these: headaches, sleeplessness, even heart arrhythmias, right after smart meters were put on their homes. For a lot of them, it was immediate. Okay, so the health stuff is a huge piece of the puzzle, but that's just the beginning. Blick's second major point is that the smart grid isn't so smart when it comes to keeping our lives private and our grid secure. We'll spy on you through your dishwasher. I mean, wow, that is a direct quote from a former CIA director, David Petraeus. It's a pretty chilling reminder of the surveillance potential of this Internet of Things. And with a smart grid, basically every big appliance in your house is now part of that network. So here's how Bleck says it works. Smart meters essentially create this incredibly detailed surveillance log of your life. The data is so granular, meaning so specific, that it can show when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you're not home. It paints a very clear picture of your daily routines. And that data trail, well, it becomes a gold mine for hackers or maybe even third parties who want to buy it. And this isn't just about your personal privacy, which is a big deal on its own. It's bigger. A U.S. Government Accountability Office report actually found that these smart meters can seriously increase the number of entry points for cyber attacks on our national grid. So get this, the very tech that's supposed to make our energy system stronger might actually be making it way more vulnerable. Okay, so we've got major health concerns and some pretty serious security risks. But what about the whole reason we're doing this, the environmental benefits? Well, according to BLEC, the smart grid isn't even all that green. They argue it actually creates a bunch of new costs that nobody's really talking about. Just look at this real-world example out of Connecticut. They ran a pilot program to test the technology, and it cost ratepayers $500 million. $1 billion. That is a staggering amount of money, especially for just a test run. And here's the absolute kicker. After spending $500 million, the state's own attorney general came out and reported that the program showed, get this, no meaningful energy savings at all. That's right. The fundamental promise of cutting energy use, it just didn't happen. But it actually gets worse. The council points out that the smart grid creates all these new, hidden energy costs. Think about it. You've got millions of new appliances and meters that are always on, just waiting for a signal, sucking up what they call vampire power. You need huge data centers to store all this information, and those things use a ton of energy. And what about the environmental cost of manufacturing millions of new meters and then just tossing out all the old ones? These are real costs that don't seem to be making it into the equation. So, we've covered the economic and environmental arguments, but I want to circle back to the health concerns for a second, because there's this really crucial concept that gets missed in the debate. It's called peak expulsing. It's not about the average steady exposure. It's all about these sudden spikes. Check out this chart. It shows a real-world reading from just one smart meter. See that tiny little bar on the left? That's the average reading. It's super low, but then look at that giant spike on the right. That is a peak pulse. It's a sudden burst of high-energy radiation that is literally thousands of times higher than the average. And these things can happen thousands of times every single day. And to put that number into perspective, there are international guidelines that consider anything over about 1,000 microwatts per square meter to be a severe concern for sleeping areas. Just one of these pulses from a single meter blows past that. It's more than 5 times that level. But that's just 1 meter on one house. Now look what happens when you start clustering them together, like in an apartment building. The peak exposure just explodes. It's amplified by orders of magnitude, reaching over 1 million microwatts per square meter. That's not a simple addition. It's an exponential increase. And this is exactly why the opt-out programs don't really fix the problem for people who are worried. The whole system is designed as a mesh network, where the signals are bouncing from house to house to house. So even if you don't have a smart meter, you're still living inside this invisible web of radiation created by all of your neighbors' meters. Now, it's really important to get this straight. The experts cited by the council, they're not anti-technology. They're not saying we should ban all wireless devices and go back to the Stone Age. What they're asking for is just common sense, a much more cautious approach that prioritizes things like informed consent and looking at safer, wired alternatives when they're available. So I guess it all leads to this one big question. As we keep rushing to make our entire world smarter, who's actually in charge of this? Who gets to evaluate the real risks? And maybe most importantly, who gets to decide what level of exposure, what level of data collection, and what level of vulnerability is acceptable for every single one of us? That's a question we should all probably be asking.